Gonna do a song here. Look what's waiting for me. Don't have a lot down here, but one day after a while, because what Jesus did for me, look what's waiting for me. Give me the first three more. In this world, I don't have much of her silver or gold. My house, it's just a cabin by the side of the road. Oh, but I've been adopted in a king's family. I may not have much here, but look what's waiting for me. Heaven is waiting for me. Such beauty and splendor these eyes have never seen. Jesus, his sweet face I'll see. I don't have much here, but look what's waiting for me. Oh, I'll reside in a mansion by a cool, gentle stream. And I'll dress up in some garments that are fit for a king. And I'll have more treasure than this whole world has ever seen. I may not have much here, but look what's waiting for me. Heaven is waiting for me. Such beauty and splendor these old eyes have never seen. Jesus, his sweet face I'll see. I don't have much here, but look what's waiting for me. Well, I don't have much here, but look what's waiting for me. Look what's waiting for me. How many people know we've got so much to thank him for here this morning?
Amen. Amen.
You know, if you got out of bed this morning and you was able to get up on your own and go, you got something to thank God for. A lot of times we look for all the problems in our life instead of all the blessings. This song says, I've got so much to thank him for. When I look around and see all the good things he's done for me, and I know of them all. For his blessings he freely gives, and I owe my life to him. I've got so much what's more, I've got so much to thank Him for. And I've got so much to thank Him for, so much to praise Him for. Oh, you see, He's been so good to me. And when I think of what He's done and where He's brought me from, I've got so much to thank Him for.
Well, amen. I tell you what, we got a lot to thank Him for.
Amen. Yep.
Most of it we've probably forgotten. That's the bad part. Anyway, I'm proud this morning to be able to introduce to you again my friend, my confidant, one of my mentors. A man that I deeply love in the Lord. The Lord's deeply and richly blessed him. I want you to pay attention this morning and listen to what he's got to say, because it's from the Lord. Amen. He's just been up to heaven, and he got a message, and he's come back to tell you. All right. Amen. Brother George, come on, sir. Love you, brother.
Amen. Well, I hope God lives up to your expectations this morning. Just want to say good morning. Thank you for being here. Thanks for having me back again. I always enjoy getting the opportunity to preach, but I especially enjoy getting to come here to preach, because you folks are so easy to preach to. You just seem to love the Lord, and you seem always to have an open heart for the truth. I read an article a few years back, and the author entitled it, "Some Things That I've Learned Throughout My Life." Now, I'm always looking for wisdom, so I sat down with the article and I read through it, and he mentioned several things that he had learned through experiences of life, and he was sharing them with others. Now, I only remember one thing that he shared in that article. One thing stood out to me, and I've tried to live by that the rest of my life. He said, "One thing I've learned in life is never take a sleeping pill and a laxative in the same night." Another fellow said concerning sleep, "When it comes time for me to die, I want to die peacefully in my sleep like my grandpa did, not like everyone else in the car screaming and crying." The thought for my message this morning is asleep in the storms. In Mark chapter 4, verse 37 and 38, the Bible said, "And there rose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, and it was now full. And he, Jesus, was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him and said unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish?" Now, what a blessing sweet and peaceful sleep is. I know many people who always seem to have trouble getting a good night's sleep. And yet, on the other hand, I've been blessed with the ability to sleep anytime, any place, and under most circumstances. Once after being sleep deprived for several nights while in the Army and basic training, I fell asleep literally while marching in a column in formation. The drill instructor column left, and I just marched straight out of the formation on down the road until my drill instructor rudely awakened me with some choice expletives that I cannot share in this sermon. But once I get asleep, then nothing seems to bother me. I've slept through some unbelievable storms, and I'll wake up in the morning and see the destruction outside and say, what happened? And someone will say, I can't believe you slept through all of that. One of the great blessings of life is sound sleep. Sleep restores the body, the mind, and the spirit like few other things. And after a good night's sleep, you just feel invigorated and renewed. Your soul seems restored to life and vitality. Now, my wife is one of those people whom sleep often evades. I tell her the Bible says that the Lord gives His beloved sleep. And if she wasn't so wicked, she'd sleep through the night like I do. She has her own opinion about that, which I also will not share in this message. Now, honestly, Maggie's had thyroid problems for years and some other things that most nights prevents her from getting a good night's sleep. And so I know what it's like by being there with her, what it's like not to get a good night's sleep. One of the great blessings of life is sound sleep. Sleep restores the body, the mind, and the spirit. Sleep often evades some people. Sleep is also an escape. Sometimes when you're troubled, you just want to fall asleep for a while in hopes that you'll wake up long after the storm has already passed by. When experiencing physical pain, people will often take sleeping medication, or the doctor will prescribe some kind of a sleeping aid to help you to sleep until the pain has subsided. An evangelist I knew years ago, one who preached revival services all of his life, said that physical tiredness probably killed more revival meetings than anything else. He explained this way. He said people often get so hopped up with spiritual energy that they overdo it physically and burn out before the revival meeting's over. But continuous spiritual revival depends upon spiritual consistency, not just on spurts of spiritual energy now and then. Generally, you'll do no more better spiritually than you are physiologically. Now, you are one person with three entities, body, soul, and spirit. And these three entities are indivisible. They are linked together. They are indivisibly woven together so as to make the one whole person that you are. And they are codependent upon each other for total well-being. Paul said if one member of the body suffers, then all the members suffer along with it. In our text, we find Jesus asleep on a pillow, or a pallet, as you might say down in the South. The storm is raging, the disciples are freaking out, and Jesus is peacefully asleep in the middle of it all. Now, this was a terrible storm, a horrible storm. Otherwise, the disciples would have paid it little mind. They face storms all the time with no problems. And anyone knows you don't trouble God with small matters, right? No use to bother God with matters when you think you have everything under control. Now, of course, you know I'm speaking facetiously here. But this does remind me of an incident many years ago, back when I was still in my last pastorate. It had been a very busy week the week before, and so I'd failed to get my grass mowed in a timely manner. At that time, I was mowing almost an acre and a half with a 22-inch push mower. It was Monday morning now, and the grass was getting almost too tall to manage with a small push mower. And the window of opportunity was almost gone. I'd hurried my way through some things at church that morning and rushed home to try to get to work on the yard before the promised rain for that afternoon showed up. After all, if the grass got a good rain for the next couple of days, then it would totally be out of control for a 22-inch push mower and an out-of-shape preacher. So I rushed home, fired up the mower as the clouds were beginning to gather on the southwestern horizon. I had finished mowing the front yard and the portions beside the house and around the garage and had mowed out into the field behind the house. I had one eye on the sky, was mowing as fast as I possibly could with that mower, and praying all the while for a little more time to finish. You know, the Bible says to watch and pray. So I was watching the sky and praying. Now this continued as I made lap after lap back and forth from one end of the field to the next. I finally got trimmed down to what I thought was now manageable. I had mentally calculated the number of laps that remained unmowed. I calculated the speed at which the storm was approaching, and I concluded that I would succeed in finishing before the rain could possibly get there. And so, full of confidence at my accurate calculations and my indisputable calculations, I just said out loud to God, "Thanks for your help. I got this under control now." Or so I thought. But as I turned to go back down the field to complete the 3 or 4 laps that I had left, suddenly the heavens were broken up and the fountains of the deep were released. I hadn't made it half a lap back down the field, and the clouds weren't even squarely up overhead yet, but in an instant I was literally soaked to the bone. I don't know when I had ever seen it rain so hard in my life. But I had little choice now. I had to finish even in the downpour. And beside that, I was now determined to finish no matter what. And so I just sort of mumbled under my breath, so God couldn't hear me, "I'll finish it now even if I drown doing it." But as I was walking down the field in that downpour, a thought came to me, and a great truth presented itself in my thinking. Here we were, out in this field in the rain with a little old push mower, father and son. If it'd been one of my boys trying to get a little too big for their britches with me or becoming a little too cocky, I would have done something very similar and often had done such things to them. We love each other, we joke with each other, we prank with each other, we just love to get one on the other. That's the kind of relationship we have as father and son. That's the way we show and share our love with each other. Amen. And so often when they're getting a little too cocky, old Dad will pull something on them just to show them he's still a step ahead of them. And as that truth broke through in my heart, I suddenly was overwhelmed with tears and laughter and great joy all at the same time. Never before in my life had I felt so loved and so intimately and personally cared for as at that moment by God. Papa was treating me just like the loved and cherished son that I was. Just like I'd treat one of my own boys, whom I loved more than my own life. The Lord was showing His love for me in a way that I personally understood as a father myself. And so here I was, soaked to the bone in a downpour that you could hardly see through, mowing away, laughing with tears flowing freely down my face, and waving a hand in the air as I was pushing the mower with the other hand. And then suddenly something else hit me. What if my old neighbor next door happened to be looking out the kitchen window at this time? Surely he would call his wife to come and see this strange sight. And he probably would greet her with words similar to these. "Hey, hon, you need to come and see this. I've wondered about that old preacher next door before, but now I think he's finally totally lost it." Now this illustrates what I said previously. If you think you can handle a thing without God's help, then there's no use bothering God about it. That's human nature, and it's rooted in our pridefulness and our independent spirit. But God is your Father, and whatever bothers you bothers Him, and whatever concerns you concerns Him. And because He's a loving Father, He wants to be included in everything that is going on in your life, even the daily humdrum things of life like mowing the grass or doing the laundry. But this storm that day on the Sea of Galilee was no everyday storm. These were seasoned fishermen. They had spent most of their lives fishing these waters on the Sea of Galilee. They could handle most storms that came up there. But this particular storm had struck fear in their hearts to the point that they feared for their very lives. They were in a panic. They woke up Jesus and cried out, "Don't you care that we're about to perish?" Let me say, of all people in the world that you would ask, "Don't you care?" Jesus shouldn't be the one.
Amen.
At which point I think Jesus calmly got up. I can imagine Him taking a leisurely stretch, taking the time to wipe the sleep out of His eyes, and then having a big yawn. And then I can imagine Him looking up toward heaven and saying, "Good morning, Papa. Thank you for the peaceful rest." All that before looking at the winds and the waves to say, "Peace, be still." Then He turned to the disciples and He said, "Why are you so fearful? Is it because you have no faith?" He had also said to Mary and Martha on one occasion, "Said I not unto thee that if you would believe that you would see the glory of God?" When the disciples had gotten into the boat with Jesus, He had said to them, "Let us pass over to the other side." So, did He say they were going over to the other side, or did He say they were going to perish in the middle of the lake? Their circumstances, the storm, seemed to be saying to them that they were going to perish. But He that once said, "Let there be light," and there was light, also said, "Let us pass over to the other side." But because they didn't have faith in what He had said, then fear filled the voids in their heart where their faith should have been. Faith and fear cannot fill the same heart at the same time. In 1 John chapter 1 and verse number 4, it tells us that perfect love casts out fear. He said that fear has torment. Now the disciples were full of fear for the same reason many of us are often filled with fear. We can only be filled with fear when we are not filled with faith. And when faith is not there, then fear will always be there, tormenting you and driving you into a panic mode. It's become so prominent in our day that we've even come up with a label for it. We've given it a medical name. We refer to it as a panic attack. Your doctor will prescribe some psychotropic drugs for you to take to help you cope with it and control your symptoms, but he has no real remedy. Jesus said, however, that perfect love is the remedy for a troubled and a fearful heart. And I've yet to meet anyone who has wholeheartedly believed that on the cross, Jesus fixed everything that needed to be fixed between us and God, once and for all, forever, hook, line, and sinker, who was not also experiencing the emotional stability of joy, peace, and the love of God in their hearts. At the root of many human problems, there's a spiritual cause that's behind the emotional, mental, and physical ailments. There's a spiritual truth that is being ignored or is being violated. There's a proverb that gives us insight into this matter. Proverbs 14:30 from the King James Version said, a sound heart is the life of the flesh, but jealousy is rottenness to the bone. God's Word has it this way, a tranquil heart makes for a healthy body, but jealousy is like bone cancer. In the ISV has it this way, a tranquil mind brings life to one's body, but jealousy causes one's bones to rot. Our spiritual well-being also affects our physical, mental, emotional well-being as well. Now, every member of the human family is compassed about by storms of life. Basically because we're born into a human family and live in a fallen world. And we mingle our way through a sea of fallen people every day, and we have to interact with them. Many today are in the middle of a stormy marriage, even as I'm speaking. And you may be thinking, I'll never get through this. I just want to go to sleep and wake up on the other side of this storm with a different mate, a Prince Charming or a Cinderella. Some are in the middle of financial storms, and wave after wave of debt and bill collectors just keep rolling in, and all the doing without is about to crush your hopes. you begin to doubt that you'll ever see the sunny shores on the other side again. You've seen it, the light at the end of the tunnel before, but it always ended up being a train to run you over. Yet others are in relationship storms, at work, at home, in the church, or maybe in the neighborhood. Do you think Jesus could bring peace into the relationship storms in Ferguson, Missouri, Detroit, Michigan, Chicago, Illinois, Miami? Perfect love casts out fear and suspicion. Loving your neighbor as yourself would calm most of the relational storms in our church, family, and community. Who knows? It might even work worldwide. Nevertheless, storms are a part of everyday life in this world, and peace will never settle over the entire world until the Prince of Peace rules over it all. But in the meantime, wherever Jesus is enthroned, peace reigns. Dr. Adrian Rogers once said, "Peace is the flag that flies over the castle of the heart where Jesus reigns on the throne." Amen. So how is it that we can possess a peaceful heart in these storms of life? How is it that we can sleep peacefully through the night in the midst of a world so filled with tribulation, problems, and storms always looming on our horizons? I believe Jesus gave us some insights in three paramount statements that he made while facing trials in his own life that retained a calm and peaceful heart in him throughout his life. The same peace that enabled him to sleep calmly in the midst of the violent storm that was raging on the Sea of Galilee that day. Jesus said in the upper room to his disciples, he said, "My peace I give to you, not peace that the world gives." Someone said the world can give trouble in time of peace, but only God can give peace in the time of trouble. Jesus said, "My peace I give to you." That means that he possessed the kind of peace to which he was referring. If he didn't have it, then he could not give what he did not have. Although Jesus was fully God, he was also fully man, or fully human. And as a human, Jesus faced the storms that all human beings face. He faced physical storms. He faced psychological storms, or emotional and mental storms, and he faced spiritual storms. Now, while facing these storms, he revealed to us the source of his peace. The Bible said, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks," or that is, the mouth reveals the true attitude in the heart. Jesus faced all the storms of life that we each face, but in three particular instances, we are allowed insight into the particular storm that he was facing at the time. And he revealed to us a truth in each one of these that maintained his peacefulness therein. I want us to draw our attention to these, and I'll form my message around these. First, there were physical storms. While living in a human body, Jesus experienced all the lusts and desires of any physical body. Jesus' physical body had the same needs and wants and physical things that anybody's body does. It wanted to be pampered, preferred, taken care of. It wanted every desire fulfilled and every need met. And these things are all legitimate things. God made you with needs, wants, and appetites, but the Bible also teaches us that God made a legitimate way for each of those needs to be met in our life, all within the will of God. The temptation is to step out of bounds to fulfill those needs and wants. The Bible also teaches that in stepping out of bounds, our peace is sacrificed. Jesus knew what it was to suffer want, need, and physical pain while patiently waiting for God's perfect timing. The prophet Isaiah tells us that Jesus suffered more physical pain than most of us can even begin to imagine. For the prophet said his visage was marred more so than any other man. That is, when they finally took Jesus to the cross, he looked more like an animal that had laid on the roadway all night and been run over by semis, more than he looked like a human being. Jesus faced the strongest and most violent of physical storms. Holman Hunt did a painting of Jesus as a young man. He portrayed him standing in the doorway of the carpenter shop, facing the western sun as it was about to set behind the horizon. Jesus has been hard at work all day in the carpenter shop. He's weary, he's tired. It's time for him to go home for supper. He's about to leave the carpenter shop, but before he goes out and closes the door, he stops in the middle of the door and he stretches out his arms. He takes a big stretch. And as he does that, the sun casts a shadow behind him on the wall of a cross. Amen. Jesus literally lived all his life in the shadow of the cross. He once said, "For this purpose came I into the world." When I was a young boy and my dad was still at home, often when we went somewhere and one of us kids would misbehave, Dad wouldn't correct us. He wouldn't punish us in public and embarrass us there. He would simply give you that look. And he'd say, "We'll settle this when we get home." That's all he would say. You talk about taking the wind out of the sails of a misbehaving boy, that certainly did it. Because I knew what it meant. There was no more fun after that, only the thought in the back of the mind of what was waiting when we got home. And that's how Jesus lived his entire life. He lived in the shadow of the cross. He was always looking forward and realized the physical storm that was waiting for him. Now notice the first insight that Jesus shared with us about possessing peace even in the midst of physical storms. In Mark 14:36, he said, "Not what I will, but what thou wilt." Another writer puts it in the more familiar way, "Not my will, but thine be done." And in verse 38, he ties this particular storm to the flesh or the physical realm when he said the flesh is weak. The majority of time when we lose our peacefulness of heart, it's tied to something that we want that we know God opposes because it's not in our best interest. And when we try to go behind God's back to satisfy the body in some way that we know God opposes, then we lose that emotional experience of God's presence. And we thusly experience the troubled heart without peace. We feel a sense of guilt and a troubled conscience when we knowingly exercise our will over God's will. This wounds the heart of God, and we also experience the pain because he that's joined to the Lord is one spirit. Our first cry out to God when we're in pain is usually, "God, remove this pain, this discomfort. Why me?" But the first thing should be, "God, I know that you love me and you have a good reason behind this. I trust your wisdom and your love for me. I know that you intend this for good and will work it all out in the absolute best way. Not what I want, but your will be done." This hard attitude will take the wind out of the storm that is raging against you physically, and a great calm will come into your being. Now, I'm not saying that we should not pray for help when we're hurting. I know that's one of the first things I usually do. All I'm saying is that we should never forget that God's great love has not abandoned us. If we allow the enemy to convince us that God has forsaken us in our storm, then the storm will only continue to get worse. Paul's pain did not go away when he prayed, but he received a blessing from God that he considered well worth the mild suffering. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. God does not abandon us in our pain. Rather, Isaiah said that Jesus comes to comfort all who mourn. Then there's psychological storms. This pertains to the mind and the emotions. Did Jesus really face psychological storms? Could he do that? Let's allow him to tell us. Mark 13:33 through 34. And he taketh with him Peter, James, and John, and began to be sore amazed, and to be very heavy. And he saith unto them, My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Luke said that he was in such anguish and heaviness of soul that his sweat became as great drops of blood falling down to the ground. This is not hypothetical. Modern day medical doctors tell us that under enough and certain kinds of stress, that small capillaries near the surface of the skin, that they can rupture and blood will literally ooze out the pores of the skin. In John 12, Jesus explains what is necessary if a seed is to bear fruit. He said it must die. Jesus explained that His death was necessary. But it isn't an easy thing emotionally and naturally to lay down your life. In verse 27 He said, Now is my soul troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour, but for this cause came I into this hour. And here's His statement for psychological peace. Father, glorify Thy name. In John 11:41b and 42a, Jesus said, Father, I thank Thee that You have heard me, and I know that You hear me always. Hebrews said Jesus prayed and was heard. Now I know that many of you have heard that in the garden, Jesus prayed not to die, that His flesh drew back. But then He thought better of it and surrendered His will to God's will. But John 11 and Hebrews refutes this false notion. I have some thoughts on this issue, but just let me say here that whatever you may think that Jesus prayed there, it was not a prayer to escape dying on the cross. And whatever He prayed for was answered. Jesus never prayed a prayer that God didn't answer. If He had prayed not to die, then He would physically still be alive and present among us today. Excuse me. Even before He left heaven to become a human, He understood clearly what His mission was, and in the garden His flesh did not rebel, nor did He pray contrary to the revealed will of God for Him to die. In Isaiah's prophecy of Jesus, Isaiah says, Neither was I rebellious. For Jesus to pray against the known will of God would have constituted rebellion and denominated Jesus as a sinner. However, the cup did pass as He prayed, and by Him drinking it, and the Father was glorified by raising Him from the dead as the Savior of the world. He prayed that death would not win. He prayed that death would not end His life before He had the opportunity to get to the cross. As He drank the cup, He conquered death. Death did not conquer Him. Jesus went to the cross peaceful in His heart and fully assured that the Father would receive glory from whatever He was to go through. And when we get to the place that where no matter what our present circumstances are, that we can turn a trusting heart to God and say, Father, whatever comes into my life, above all, I want You to receive glory from and for my life. Then a peacefulness will flood our troubled souls like it did that of Jesus. Luke 22 says, after he had prayed, there appeared an angel and strengthened him. And when Paul was praying about his storm or the thorn, God's voice came and said, Paul, my grace is sufficient. The fact of knowing that God has purposes in your life, and His purpose is to get glory from it, and that nothing can defeat Him, then that can bring the emotional and psychological storms in your heart, and it can replace it with a great calm. Father, glorify Your name. And then it said, a voice answered back from heaven and said, I have and I will also glorify you. Excuse me. Next, there's spiritual storms. Jesus also faced spiritual storms. At the very outset of His ministry, Jesus faced the devil head-on in a barrage of temptations of the wilderness. Although Satan came to Him in the area of the body, hunger, and of the soul, pride of life, yet His temptations were all rooted in the spiritual realm. For Satan tried to get Him, just as with Eve, tried to get Him to question the accuracy of God's Word by misquoting it to Him, like he did Eve in the garden. But unlike Eve, who tried to prop up or defend God's Word, Jesus simply put it back into its proper context and thusly put the devil back in his place. In the garden while praying, Luke said Jesus looked up and was sore amazed. Now, what in the world could amaze Jesus? I believe every force of evil in existence was gathered there along with the devil personally himself that day for one last-ditch effort to try and prevent Jesus from making it to the cross. But Jesus plowed on to the cross, and upon the cross He cried, "It's finished. The war is over." Men and demons had tried to take His life prematurely, but had failed, and Jesus emerged victoriously. So when His mission was completed, then He bowed His head as graciously and as deliberately as a father would bow his head with his family at the supper table and offer up thanks. Jesus did not slump down and whisper with the last fleeting breath, "It is finished." No, the Bible said He cried with a loud voice. And when God thunders with His voice, then mountains quake, the sun goes dark, the veil rends, the rocks are rent in half, the graves are open, and the dead get up out of the graves and walk around the city. Amen. Excuse me. And then He said, "Father, into Thy hands commend I my spirit." The devil could not take my life away, and evil men could not take my life away. I lay it down that I might take it up again. Jesus victoriously and purposefully bowed His head as an act of reverence and dismissed His spirit into the hands of His Father. Jesus was not a victim, He was the victor. And when we're confronted spiritually, the attack is always against the truth of God. The devil is not a peddler of dope, he's a pusher of false doctrine. The demonic attack is against your spirit. And the way to weather those storms with peacefulness is by continuing to the clear Word of God's truth. Revelation said they overcame the devil by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of the testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. What was their testimony? It was this: we believe that the blood of Jesus has fixed us up with God forever. And we believe God's clear word about it. No matter whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, which is far better. So, devil, if you kill me, it'll only be because it's God's time for me to die. And all you'll be doing is hastening what I've been waiting for ever since I got saved. So go ahead if you can, for my spirit belongs to God because I put my trust in Jesus. And you can't touch my spirit, which is now the real and true me. And when you know that your spirit is forever linked with God's Spirit and that nothing can change that, that gives you a peace that passes all understanding, a great calm. Amen. Simon Peter illustrated this for us in the book of Acts. James had been executed by Herod, and now Peter's head was on the chopping block. Peter was scheduled to die the very next morning. Peter was on his last mile. He was next to die. It was the last night before his execution, and what was Simon Peter doing? Was he pacing the jail floor and nervously wringing his hands? No, he was sound asleep. chained between two guards. As a matter of fact, he was sleeping so soundly that when the angel told him to get up, he didn't even awaken. Not even at the angel's voice. The angel had to go over close to him and whack him on the side to get him to come awake. Jesus also revealed why the disciples on the boat were panicking instead of enjoying His peace. Look at Mark 4 again, verse number 40. He said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" John said in 1 John, "This is the victory that overcomes the world, even our faith." He also said, "Perfect love casts out fear." The storms in your life that are robbing you of your peace could all be replaced by a great calm if you would only learn to trust in God's Word more fully. It doesn't matter how you're feeling at the time. It doesn't matter what your emotions might be saying. You can still confess with your heart, "Thy will be done." Father, glorify Thy name. Into Thy hands commend I my spirit. Jesus gave us these truths upon which we can pillow our heads at night and sleep peacefully through the worst of storms that the world and the devil can throw at us. "My peace I leave with you, not peace that the world gives." Jesus bequeathed His peace to His followers. If you're not yet a follower of His, why not? Why not join the family today by putting your trust in Jesus and in His finished work? All that's necessary for you is for you to invite Jesus to come and live in your heart. It's as simple, it's as easy as it was to say "I do" to your mate in the marriage ceremony when the official said, "Do you agree to receive this woman or this man as your lawfully wedded wife or husband?" And when you said "I do," the official then said, it's done. I now pronounce you, or I now declare that you are husband and wife. John said in John 1, if you believe in Jesus and receive Him into your heart, then you are declared by God to now be His child. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved. So if you're having trouble sleeping at night, may I recommend that you try My Pillow. I guarantee you'll have the best night's sleep that you've ever had in your entire life. Father, glorify Thy name. Not my will, but Thine be done. Amen. Into Thy hands I commend my spirit. Into Thy hands I commend my situation. Into Thy hands I commend my life. Here are 3 truths upon which we can pillow our heads at night and get a good night's sleep. God bless you, and a good night to you all. Brother Ray's going to come, lead us in a verse or two of an invitational hymn. At this church, the altars are always open. You have any kind of a need concerning anything, no matter who you are, where you're from, whatever the situation, you're always welcome. And God will meet you at a place of prayer. If you're not saved this morning, it's as simple as I just explained it. You know, when you said "I do," all of a sudden you're married. And you've been married ever since. And when you say "I do" to Jesus, you're saved. Amen. And you're saved as long as He lives. And He lives forever. Amen. If you have a need this morning, we invite you to come, whatever it might be. If you have questions, if you have concerns about being saved, if you'd like to talk to someone about that, you need someone to pray with you, whatever the need, you come as Brother Ray comes to take the service.
Let's stand as we sing.